All right, looks like I'm live, and I finally got everything set up. YouTube changed a few of their things, so I had just a few issues, but I'm also working on getting my mic set up. But anyway, welcome to the Racing Roots chat with Hamm Solo. I decided to call it Hamm Solo tonight. You know, kind of like Han Solo. Anybody ever see the Star Wars movies from back in the day? I think everybody in this world has seen the Star Wars movies. Maybe I should start dressing up like Han Solo and trying to fly around the Hammscapes. Maybe, maybe not. All right, thank y'all for joining me this evening. I just decided to do a live chat and get some feedback on when I do my Racing Roots with Hamm show. Of course, you know, I usually have a guest, and I put it off last night because we had some meetings with the radio station. I wasn't sure what that was about, so I decided that I should just delay having my chat. So I decided to have it tonight. And as you can tell, I'm not in the comfort of the studio. I'm actually out here in my shop, and it's a bit muggy and all that kind of stuff. I mowed 7 yards today. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Hopefully it's all good, because this is my first time using this mic setup, and I've got the volume cranked all the way up too. So if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up, because there's no way of me. Well, you know what? I can turn on my. Okay, let's see. Hopefully it's all good. Okay, I can hear myself. First time using this mic. See this right here? And I've got the volume cranked. All right. So tell me if the volume's good, if it's not too loud, because I can control it right here. I've got this effects mixing board and all that good stuff. So I'm trying to up my deal. You know, up my system, make things better, make things a little bit more to where the volume, the mic sounds good, the camera's good, and all that kind of stuff. So what's everybody up to tonight? It looks like Liz and Dawn are hanging out on the porch over at Dawn's house, and Rachel Rodman's hanging out down there in the Charlotte town. And let's see what Paul Rodriguez. What's up, Paul? I got your messages earlier. Sometimes when I'm out and about doing my mowing and stuff like that, I'll check my messenger, but I don't always respond. But thanks for those. I guess I can turn this down now. All right. Oh, you can hear me all the way down in Port St. Lucie, Florida. I guess that's where you are still, right? Unless you're on vacation. But when you're in Port St. Lucie, do you have to go on vacation? I mean, really? I mean, I realize here in Statesville, you know, I have to go to the beach and that kind of stuff. But, yeah. That's my old Lc8 hat that I got. It's got the pink to support breast cancer. So I thought maybe it looked better than my old sweaty head, even though I have gotten home and took a shower and all that kind of stuff. As you can tell, I got a little bit of sun today. I got a little bit more sun on my arms and such, but no farmer tan. How about this hat? This is my one of my old Sprint Cup hats. I should just have a show and show all my hats sometime, because I've got many. I've got boxes of hats, as you can imagine, from back in the day. All right, hopefully my video is working out okay. Getting a message from YouTube saying that the video is not looking that good or something like that. So I'll just ignore that. Hopefully it's good. All right, so Dawn says, I saw the original Star Wars movie last year, told my parents I went to the movies with my boyfriend and made out in his Galaxy 500 instead. Okay, so you didn't actually go to the movie theater, and you just now saw Star Wars. How about that? That's actually kind of impressive. And the fact that you made out a Galaxy 500, I guess the back seat's pretty big in those, so that would have been all right. Well, good for you, Dawn. That's a funny story. You'll have to tell that next time we're on air together. Next time you come in the studio and we do one of our shows, and you're helping me with that with one of my guests. And I want to get the guest's input on that. Rachel says, hey, David, have you been to the Old State Line Speedway? It was cool to visit there this past weekend, to see some local track racing. Very cool, Rachel. I saw your pictures from the racetrack. Very good. I saw it on Google. So tell me about your Google photos. You have to explain that one to me, because I haven't. I've got a site called Flickr that I put a lot of pictures on. And I had so many on there, and I put them on when it was a free site, And then Flickr decided to change it to a paying site, so it cost me $50 a year. But I had too many pictures on there to try to take them off, you know. And the good deal about that is you can put them on and then you can download them in this original quality, so it's really high quality stuff. You know, if you put a picture on Facebook and then you go and download it, the quality is definitely not as good as the original that you put on. So, what's up, Brian Spencer up in Pennsylvania? You know what, I don't have, he asked if I have any Mellow Yellow racing hats. I don't believe that I do. I've got some Mellow Yellow postcards, and I got there at the end of the Mellow Yellow season, pretty much right at the end of the last year of the Mellow Yellow season in 1994, when the race shop was down in Charlotte. And so I didn't get very much Mellow Yellow stuff. That would have been cool. And I really wanted to get on that team 2 years earlier, and I tried for a couple years. And finally they had a position open for me, and that's when I started there at the end of 94. Originally I had interviewed with Jeff Hammond over at the Dirt Devil car, the 40 car, and Kenny Wallace was the driver back then. And I had interviewed with him, and I didn't get the job. It was to do electrical, you know, wiring and all that kind of stuff in the race car. And so he didn't hire me. And I've since asked him, you know, what's up with that, man? And so when I ended up being the Jackman for Kyle in 96 is whenever I went to Indy, and I saw Jeff Hammond after we walked through the old gasoline alley sign and all that. And I said, hey, Jeff, you remember me? He said, yeah, I remember you. I said, well, I'm a Jackman now. I'm Jackman for Kyle Petty, so maybe you should have hired me. No, I didn't say that. I could have said that, though. But anyway, since then we've become somewhat friends, acquaintances and all that. We're almost neighbors now. Maybe I'll get him on the show sometime. But hopefully I'll be back in the studio, and we'll do this. I can do the show from there maybe next week, so we'll see. I'm supposed to have Doug Richard coming in next week, and as y'all know, he is the crew chief, or he's been a crew chief for a long time. He was, I don't know if the first team he worked for was that Rod Osterlund 2 car of Dale Earnhardt, but I know he's friends with Dale Jr. I've seen pictures of them together. Last Monday, he couldn't come in because he had something going on over at Curb Records, Mike Curb Racing, his old racing museum. They had some pictures in there. I saw him on Facebook of him with that 2 car, the old Wrangler Jeans car. Okay, came back to me. So anyway, he's going to be on with me next Monday, and I should be over at the WAME studio. I just thought I'd do this tonight because I didn't get to y'all last night. I had that other stuff going on. So Rachel says Google Photos. Oh, Google Photos comes with Gmail. So any picture I take with my phone goes right to Google Photos. It's free and easy to share. Do you have a Gmail account? I do. I have 2 different Gmail accounts. So I'll have to check that out. I'll have to see that. I actually was going to start doing a Google blog because I do have my website, DHammiam.com. So check it out when you get a chance. And I have a hamscapes.com, but I haven't got any content on the Hamscapes one yet. It used to link to my Shopify store, but I'm totally revamping that store. So I'm going to go through and get rid of some of the products that are on there that I don't want anymore. So that store is shut down for now. But DHammiam.com is where I put all my social links to everything. And then I also put links to these YouTube videos that I do here. So, yeah, Rachel says, it's crazy. How could he not hire David Hamm, the engine man? Well, back then I was a dealership technician, and I went through college at Central Piedmont. So, I don't know. Would have been good for the job, as he later found out, I would say. But you know what? Sometimes whenever you don't do things, better things come along. And I was actually happier that I got the job off of North Tryon in Charlotte, because at the time I was living down in South Charlotte. So it was about a 20-minute drive for me to go from South Boulevard, Airwood Road, up to off of North Tryon. And so I would just drive up there and go to work. Versus going to Harrisburg, which is where the 40 car shop was. And that was kind of like the B team. So, and that team ended up going away the next year. So it was a good thing that I ended up not getting that job, because I would have just been out of a job. So that kind of set me up to, go through the whole deal that I ended up over at Robert Yates Racing for 16 years. So, yes, Dickie said, "What's up, Dickie?" Dennis up in Richmond, Virginia. Hope everything's going okay up there. I know all the monuments and all that crazy stuff going on. We got a little bit of that here in Statesville, but we've only got really one monument. But it's getting. Yep. So, all right. So back, Brian Spencer says, back when I went to 3 or 4 races a year. I bought some nice leather hats. A Smokin' Joe's, I remember that one, and a Coors Light. I believe the Smokin' Joe's was a Jimmy Spencer, right? So they are pretty nice, and I still have them. Very cool. And it had the camel on it, if I'm not mistaken, that too. So Dickie Dennis is with us, as I mentioned. He says, "Good evening, y'all." He's the infamous fence climber he climbed the fence at Richmond Raceway in 2014. And he got kicked out for life. We need to have him come down here and climb some fences. Go down to Charlotte. So Dickie, I wonder if you went to each race and you climbed a fence at another race, if they would say, okay, you can no longer go to a NASCAR race. I wonder if that would be the case, because I know you can still go. Maybe you're not as crazy as you were back then. So if you haven't seen the video to Dickie Dennis, you have to check it out. I'll put it up here. Let's see. Which way would it be? Over my right shoulder. I'm looking at myself on the screen trying to figure out which way. All right, I'm going to put the link right up here to that video if y'all want to watch it. So Paul says, have him on the show so we can get to the bottom of why he overlooked you for the job. Yes, that's a good question. I called him out on it. Actually, I said something to him. I was going to say on the radio, but it was after the radio. I was on the sports recap show up at WAME, and I said something to him after the show. But it's all good. He's a good guy. He just, that's one of those deals you just never know, especially you're going to hire somebody that doesn't have the experience that maybe he needed at the time. Of course, I had experience with wiring and such, but just not on a NASCAR race car. Maybe I was too gung-ho, like I just really wanted a job in racing, and I could have just said, hey, I want a job in racing so bad, I don't care what I'm doing. Back whenever you're younger and you just really want something so bad, you don't really have a reason. You kind of have to have a reason for everything you do in life. And, you can do the whole seven-step thing of your reasons why, and then that's when you come down to your real reason. So maybe had I went in there and said, I would just love to do wiring on a race car because I eat, sleep, and dream with wires. I have them in the bed with me. That's my life. I'm being silly, but maybe that would have worked. I don't know. I'm out here with the skeeters, and when the mosquitoes see me, they say, Hamm buffet, free blood, Hamm Solo. That's my new alter ego, whatever you call it. Instead of a pirate and, g'day, mate, I'm going to be Hamm Solo. I think I got one of those lightsabers somewhere. All right, back to the content here. Yes. All right, so Rachel says, oh, that's cool, Brian. I found an old Winston jacket on eBay. I love that era of NASCAR stuff. I do have some very cool old jackets. My team jackets from my Sabco days, we had the coolest jackets. And I have one from 1995, the blue and the neon orange Coors Light. And I wish I'd have got a Melly Yellow jacket. What's up? So, and then I have the one from 96, and then Felix bought us leather jackets. I also have a leather jacket from Lc8 Engines that Ford gave us whenever we won the championship in 2004. They gave us one, and on the inside it says, you open it up in the pocket, and it says, best engine builders in the world, something, something, and it's got the Ford emblem in it. When it comes wintertime, I'll wear that, and I'll show y'all. All right, so one of the reasons for this show, too, is I wanted to ask y'all if what you would like to see on the Racing Roots with Hamm. Exactly. So you know, you're always welcome when I have a guest that you can ask questions all you want, of course. But what are some of the other things that would make the show more interesting for you? I know at some point I was doing some show and tell, you know, like I was showing different things, like I've got sitting here on my bench. All right, so like this right here. I've showed this piston one time. You know, this was a piston this is what we used to use back 25 years ago in NASCAR. See that big skirt? These big piston rings and this big dome. So this was back when we would run 14-to-1 compression. Okay, so we would take this and cut it down, and then when you check your compression, you check your engine CCs with alcohol and check to see what the compression would be. So you can see it's a pretty good sized piston right here, and it's heavy. It's like, I don't know, 550 grams or something like that. So I'm going to get another piston of a modern day piston. And actually, you know what, I'm not really going to show this piston too much. It's one that I got Joey Logano to design because it's kind of, maybe it's too new, and I don't want to show off a piston that might still be run. All right, so here's a piston from a restrictor plate that was run back in 2005. Let's see, this would have been 2000. The 38 car one, if that gives you any indication of when this was. I had built the engine 2005 for the 38 car, which was Elliott Sadler, and he went down. He won the 150 race at Daytona. But you can see how much smaller this piston is. And then the wrist pin and the rings, they're all so much smaller. Anyway, that's like what I was just saying about my show and tell segments. One of the things that I do that may interest my listeners, watchers. All right, so nowadays, Paul says, so anyway, put your, and if you want to, even after this video ends, first of all, don't forget to hit the subscribe if you haven't already. But whenever I do in this video, if you want to go on and put a comment, put a question, and ask me, or mention to me what you'd like to see with the Racing Roots with Hamm. Any changes, anything you'd like to see different. So, all right, so Paul says nowadays NASCAR might hire Dickie to climb the fence as part of the opening ceremony at some tracks. He would be affordable. Ford in capital letters. I like that, Paul. And, you know, they might actually do it just to get more interest, because some of the interest has gone down, it seems. You know, so they'll get Dickie out there to make the headlines again and make people wonder what happened at the NASCAR race. Dickie says, I would totally be honored to give the command the start of the engines from the catch fence. I would watch that. I mean, it would definitely be good. It would be worth seeing. Just think about how many autographs you would sign, Dickie. Rachel says, I love seeing the mechanical parts and having you explain them so we understand how a race car works. Yes, so a lot of times I guess I get kind of carried away with, or I kind of figure that people already know stuff. So I just kind of figure that, what's up, Tay? Thanks for joining us, buddy. See Tay, he's a 9-year-old prodigy, plays the guitar, very good, very nice young man. So I take for granted that people already know how stuff works. And I could show you some different things if y'all want to see lifters, like the evolution of the lifters. I've got some over here, but I'd have to walk away from the screen. So y'all may or may not be interested in that, but that's just one of the parts on the engine. Have y'all heard of lifters before? I'm assuming. So that's just another, like I said, another engine part. All right, so we have Liz on here and Dawn. I know y'all are going to be hanging out. It looks like might be wanting a storm or something outside. I don't know. I've got my doors open. It actually feels pretty good. It finally cooled down a little bit. So, all right. So if y'all have any questions, throw them on here at me. And I also want to ask how everybody's getting through all of the whole thing we've got going on right now with the pandemic. I don't want to talk too much about that, but hopefully you're all working. You're all set. And that kind of stuff. Brian says, do you know anything about this new series that Ray Abraham and Tony Stewart are starting next year? Okay, so yeah, and then I'll answer Rachel's question next. The only thing I've seen is I've seen a headline. Probably I know as much about that as you do. Starting a new series. And you know, that's something that's been talked about for, gosh, probably at least 10 years, I would say. You know, NASCAR went through a little bit of a slump. And then some of the guys started talking about starting their own series. It seems like Roush was in on that originally. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, it just remains to be seen. I think that they're going to test the waters and see how it works. And, you know, it might be one of those deals if it takes off and does good, they might end up keeping it around. Or it might actually end up being, you know, growing more than, I don't know about getting bigger than NASCAR. I mean, NASCAR's already got that fan base, reputation, and all that of, you know, many years of going. So it would be tough to compete with that. But if they got back to the real racing roots, like that, then I think that would spark the interest of fans. You know, get back to the grassroots racing is basically what it comes down to. All right, so I'll answer Rachel's question right now, right quick. The cherry picker is what you use to pull an engine out of a car, basically. So I've got a couple here in my shop. I've got a big chain hoist. I've got a car lift, but they call it a cherry picker. It's got an arm that goes out with a chain hanging down. I would show you the one I have, but it's over there in the corner, and it folds up. Mine actually folds up. The legs go down or whatever. But it's whenever you see an engine hanging from a hoist in the race shop, that's the cherry picker. And a lifter is what opens and closes the valves on an engine, on a running engine. Like I've got this engine behind me right here that I would just put a new camera lifters in, and I can show you what the lifters look like that come out of it. Now it's a hydraulic lifter, which is totally different than a... All right, just give me 1 minute. I'll go grab some lifters right quick. Oh, sorry. All right, I'll be back. Grabbing lifters. Grabbing lifters. All right. Okay, so I got lifters. All right, so here's the lifters. Sorry about all the noise. My little chair here makes quite a bit. Okay, so here's a lifter out of that engine that I'm working on. This one's actually pretty much destroyed. It's junk. But this is a hydraulic lifter, meaning that there's this little pedal in here that is controlled by oil pressure. So when oil moves this, that's what pushes the push rod and opens the valve and makes the engine run, or makes the engine breathe and exhaust. And there's, in an 8-cylinder engine, there's 16 of these. Okay, this is hydraulic. And really, it looks just like a solid lifter, which means a solid lifter doesn't have the spring inside. And we could get into a whole other discussion about that. But that's also a flat tappet lifter. See, the bottom's flat. And here is a roller lifter. This was actually run in NASCAR. This was run in the Busch Series back in the day, and now the Cup Series runs a roller lifter. So when you hear them talking about a roller, they're talking about this roller right here. Okay, so in the Cup Series, and we didn't run, these ones have the tie bar, and I've got this on here because I use it for checking. I put an indicator on here, and that's whenever I'm checking cam lift and that kind of stuff. So I kind of made this contraption that goes down in there. But this one's got the tie bar on it. That's why I say it was running the Busch Series about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. But the roller lifter, it's when you call it here roller cam, roller lifter, that's what that is. And now this is kind of an example of a lifter this was a 1947 Buick engine. And it's a tappet. You know, it could be called a lifter, whatever, but it serves the same purpose. But inside it's hollow. All it is just a tube of metal, and it's got the hole in it where oil can go up in here, and so that just moves up and down in the engine and on the cam, runs against the camshaft. So basically, that's a lifter too. All right. So Dickie, Racing Roots. You know, when you spelt it like that, Routes, I actually thought about changing the name of my show, not the name of it, but instead of spelling it racing ROOTS to racing ROUTES, like you just spelled it. So it's ironic that you spelled it that way. And I'll tell you why I was thinking about changing it. Because I posted on Twitter, and if you don't follow me on Twitter, it's DHammiam there as well. But I posted a link to this video on Twitter, and I noticed on one of my other Twitter accounts, it wasn't showing the picture because it said it was sensitive content because it had the word roots in it. And I'm like, why is that sensitive content, you know? So, and I looked on another account, Tracy looked on her account, and it said sensitive content. So, in other words, that ROOTS is now a sensitive word, apparently. So I thought about changing it to ROUTES. So I may do that for the next one. And it kind of explains, you know, like you're on a road, it's a route, you know, racing route. All right. But anyway, Dickie says Racing Roots is really cool going back in time, so to speak. That's right. I like that. All right, so let's go back here. Rachel, it was interesting to hear how the Wood Brothers used the old birch tree to lift up their engines. Nascar started from humble beginnings, yes. And you know, I don't know why exactly it's called a cherry picker. Maybe it was first done from a cherry tree. Okay, now it's raining. Well, that explains, I was hearing a little bit of wind and such. All right, but yes, back in the day, and I've done it too, you know, had to pull an engine from using a tree limb. It's a little scary. Now I have my own hoist over the back in the corner over here. Liz says the pandemic sucks. Thank goodness for Dawn's Porch and the Hamm solo show. Well, thank you. Thank y'all for coming in. It's more enjoyable whenever we're doing it and y'all can come in and hang out. Okay, so Dawn says talk a little bit about the amazing engine in the Hall of Fame. Yes, we have our engine there on display in the Hall of Fame, and it's the Lc8 engine that was. All right, so we put the engine together at Lc8's, and it's basically, it's the same thing that we run. I mean, we just kind of use older parts, you know, clean them up, paint them up, that kind of stuff. But every engine that we would build at Lc8's engines was, I mean, whenever it was done, it was done. It didn't matter what car it was going in, if it was, you know, there was times where we would sell an engine, of course, that won a race. And Roger Penske, you know, if he would hit a milestone and he won, you know, Ford's 1000th race, whatever, you know, then they would buy the engine to go in the car, you know, because they were leasing the engines from Lc8 engines from Doug Yates, of course. So when in a race, they would buy them. So we would rebuild the engine and give it back to them. Now the engine that was in the Robert Yates tribute car, I had built that engine in the original race when Ricky Stenhouse was driving it, that 17 car, and then I ended up rebuilding it, putting it back in the car, and they gave the car to Doug Yates. So how cool is that? So that was basically all of the original parts. I mean, some of it was like, you know, the headers I believe were chrome, and you know, we don't run chrome headers, but it looks better instead of, you know, metal that's starting to rust, and it keeps them from rusting. So. But thanks for that question, Dawn. Paul says, Brian, I think it's going to be sort of an IROC series thing. It does kind of sound like it because they're talking about all the cars are going to be the same. That's that series they're talking about starting with Tony Stewart. It's all going to be the same. The cars are going to be set up the same. They're going to be, you know, I don't know who's going to be the drivers. So that would be interesting. You know, sort of like, you know, if y'all don't know what the IROC series is, they used to always run that race before, let's see, during the speed weeks down at Daytona. And so I got this fan blowing my mustache hairs. I got a fan set up on the side of it. I actually moved it away from me because I didn't want it blowing in the microphone. And then I got a big fan blowing. It's a blower motor back here. You can't see it, but it's like a blower motor that you have in a house. And it's actually blowing air behind me. So Brian, I think it's yes. And Dickie says I'm allowed to kayak again. have been twice. Added another YouTube video today. Okay, Dickie, you need to tell us what your YouTube channel is. Well, obviously, Dickie Dennis. So y'all go check Dickie Dennis out. And on his YouTube channel, he puts videos of him kayaking. And they're very nice and peaceful, just serene. You know, I would love to go kayaking. I know Tracy doesn't like the water. She doesn't like to eat anything out of the water, and she doesn't like to, I say that, she loves the ocean, but she doesn't like getting in the water, really. So, but kayaking would be a lot of fun. I actually have 2 kayaks out in my, out in my container, and I have never used them before. So one of these days, I'm just going to go and do that. And Paul says only 6 races a year for that series, yes. So maybe only 12 drivers too, Brian says. Yep, Racing Roots going back in time. All right, let's see what's going on next. Really, oh yeah, you can tow it. So Paul says you can rent a cherry picker out at the U-Haul. Who would have thunk? So he says you can tow it home, take your motor out, and put the new one in. Huh. How about that? I did not know. I didn't have a clue about that. Brian says, can you give an estimate of engine weight back in the Sabco days compared to when you left RYE? Oh my goodness. That is a good question, because I don't remember. We would put the, back in the Sabco days, I don't remember. I would say, if I had to guess, you know, the engines nowadays are a little over 500 pounds. I mean, this is with the bell housing, starter, you know, intake, the throttle body, all that stuff. But back in the day, if I had to guess, we were trying to lighten everything, but the parts were so much heavier. Just like I showed you, this piston was so much heavier. I know, y'all, I'm getting a little bit of buffering, I can tell, but I'm kind of doing the best I can with the internet that I have here. So the I would say it's probably about probably 50 pounds heavier if I had to just totally guess, between you add up all the parts and all that stuff. So I wish I could remember, and I might be able to find some stuff. I know the bob weights on the crankshaft, whenever we had to make the rotating reciprocating weights were so much more back then too. So everything's gotten lighter nowadays. Let's see, Brian says, okay, that was Brian's question. Hey, what's up, Bob Patterson? So Bob Patterson used to go with me to the racetrack when, I believe it was with the 42 car, if my memory serves me correct, with Joe Nemechek. Where'd you go, Bob? Let's see. I might have scrolled down too far. Sorry about that. Oh, there's Bob. So Bob Patterson says, Ray and Tony's thing is kind of a reboot of the IROC series, 5 or 6 races and spec cars, all-star drivers from all series. Okay. Well, thanks for that input there, Bob. Good to see you on here again, as always. One of these days I'll have you come up and join me on the show. That would be cool. All right, so Mike Baird, we got ours at the Quality Rental, right? What's up, Mike Baird? I didn't see you on here, so throw out any questions if you have them. Rachel says Twitter is a Gibbs fan. It's all this Ford stuff. There you go. So, all right, so Paul says it would be tough to be a tree service on YouTube without talking about the roots. Yes, geez. Oh, I know, Paul. It's, you know, it's just it's a shame the way things are nowadays, but you kind of, I guess you just have to make some changes with the times to kind of survive. You know, that's what we're doing right now. So Rachel says that is really cool. I'm so happy Robert Yates knew he would be inducted into a Hall of Fame before he passed away. Yes, he was very, you know, he was a very modest man, but I could really tell he was happy about that. You know, that's one thing. Just a great guy. I wish I could find the video. They interviewed some of us at Robert Yates. We had to go into a room and sit down it was a dark room. We had lights in our face. and we had to tell our favorite Robert Yates story. And I basically told the story of when I was a kid, and one of the stories, I guess you could say, and I'm sure that video is probably on here somewhere, that when I was a kid growing up in Charlotte, which back in the day it was Race City, USA, was Charlotte, North Carolina, and we also had wrestling and racing. That was the two big things down in Charlotte. And most of the drivers lived in Charlotte, and most of the wrestlers lived in Charlotte, you know, from like the... Anyway, so I told the story of riding my bicycle back in the old Dyguard days, whenever he was the engine builder there, and he would have the dyno blaring, and I just told him I would ride my bicycle by the old Dyguard shop, and the first question he asked was, "Did you hear the engines running?" You know, he was an engine man, and he loved his engines, and he would say that, and so he would say, and then he would just kind of smile and perk up whenever he'd say that, you know. It's like, yes, I did. I was riding by, and I'd hear them engines just going, you know. So, you know, another thing he would always say is, if somebody said motor, I'm going to put this motor, I'm building this motor, he'd say, a motor is electric. You know, that's another thing I learned from Robert Yates, is that it's an engine if it's reciprocating and all that. So an electric motor, it just spins, you know, and it works off of magnets and electricity, electromagnets basically. And then you can reverse that and make it into an alternator or generator. You know. All right, that's another story. We'll get into electronics, electricity, and all that stuff on another episode. But yes, I'm glad Doug was able to keep that car also. But I've got a video on that, and I'll try to put that. Which way did I say it was? Right here. I'll try to put the link to that video right up here. But it's the video that shows whenever Doug Yates fired that car up. So they brought it in the shop. We had this big presentation, and then Doug was there, started it up, and I'm standing there with my phone recording the whole thing. And I know someday it's going to be like gold. You know, that's one of those memories that, you know, so I could see his excitement, and he starts the car, and so it's very cool. But that video is right here on my YouTube channel. I waited till I was actually, you know, a couple years later to post that, because I actually had put it on YouTube or Facebook, I'm sorry, and Roush Corporation had sent a message over to have me take it down because it was showing some of the secrets, or whatever. I should have said secrets, which I didn't really, at the time, I didn't think they really had any secrets because they weren't running that good. But anyway, I understood. I totally understood. So I took it down. All right. Thank you, Dawn. So there's Tracy. I am DHammiam. We're just talking about you. You might have heard me talking about you here. Let's see. What's that? Dawn says she made my own dinner tonight. Well, I actually had some leftover Taco Bell. I know we're not talking about my dinner, but last night I went to Taco Bell and I spent $21. This was after our meeting with the radio station. I went to Taco Bell and I spent $21, and only probably $3 of that was for Tracy. So I'm notorious for having my Taco Bell night, where I look at their menu and I'm like, I just start saying stuff like burrito, Mexican pizza, I want the nachos, burrito supreme, did I say that one? Oh my gosh. But I sat down at the kitchen table when I got home, I guess it's about 7:30, and I ate every bit of it except for the Crunch Wrap. That was the one I didn't say. So I ate all these other things except for the Crunch Wrap. And then I ended up working it off this morning, so it was all good. Rachel asked, David, what is your favorite little local track? My favorite little local track would be, I like going to Carolina Speedway. It's a dirt track down in Gastonia, and that's kind of the one that the first one I remember going to as a kid, and the first one I worked in the pits, the first one I had engines run at. I had engines run in Doug Sanders' car, and my nephew Brandon Blair, I built engines for him, and I also had carburetors that won there, and the basically stock series. I was building a lot of the a lot of the different carburetors for the different drivers there. So yeah, that's my favorite track. They're in Cherokee because I've had stuff win there too. I like doing the old dirt tracks. That's a lot of fun. I like working on engines, building carburetors, and all that kind of stuff. So yes, and you can't beat that local short track stuff. The dirt's fun. I haven't been to a whole lot of asphalt. I say that. I have been to a lot of asphalt tracks, but a lot of them were in my NASCAR days. Concord, the Madhouse out in Winston-Salem. I've been by Hickory, but I've never actually gone and sat and watched a race at Hickory Motor Speedway. And that's something that I probably should do. I probably should do that. I'm just going to mention right quick, if you're joining me for the first time, hit that subscribe, hit the bell notification. I'm not going anywhere right now, but just do that because we go live every Monday night at 7:30. And I say that Monday night because it was supposed to go live last night, but I ended up switching it to Tuesday. But I didn't want to skip a week. I just don't feel right whenever I skip. So Tracy says, I don't like not being able to see what's in the water. The lake where Ann and Tommy and Barbara live is close, so I might be able to do a little life jacket on since I can't swim either. Okay. Well, maybe we should do that. That's lake, I forgot what the lake is, but it's up in Tennessee, just into Tennessee, up near Bristol. Beautiful lake. And there's actually some little streams there too that would be cool to go kayaking in. So we'll have to try that. Yes. Dickie seems surprised by Tracy's not liking or knowing what's in the water. All right. See Brian Spencer. Thanks for tuning in. He says, got to run ham steaks, what he calls me. Tell Tracy hello. Wish you two continued health. Thank you. Yeah, Bob Pedersen says, did all three while I was there. That's right. You did the 40, the 46, and the 42. How could I forget? Sorry about that, Bob. It's all coming back to me now. It has been 25 years almost. It's been 23, 24 years. So, yeah, it's been a while ago. So my dogs are coming in here now because here comes the rain. Paul says, David, I have to think every time I open my mouth so I don't offend someone. Yes, I've got a shirt that says, I'm offended that you're offended. Sometimes I open my mouth to say something and go, nope, don't go there. Paul, I do the same thing. That's why I just don't even get into that stuff too much on my chats because I try to keep it to the positive and about the roots of racing. It's ROUTES. I'll probably go and change the name of this video just to have it that way. But I kind of like that Hamm Solo. Well, I don't like being solo, but I'm just saying I thought, like Han Solo, Hamm Solo. Yes. Well, Rachel, yes. Oh, back to being humble is an admirable trait that many, especially those in NASCAR, lack having. Yes. That's true. Rachel says that's true, Tracy. Humble is missing from NASCAR today from how humble people were in NASCAR in the past. And I'm going to tell you, whenever I was starting in NASCAR, there was there's always been egos. I think there's egos in everything that you do. And depending on the positions, a lot of times, of course, the drivers always had the bigger egos. And some of them were really cool. Some of them didn't have that, But there's always been that certain amount. You could tell who was just really nice and who was humble. And most of the people that I worked with in NASCAR have been that way. Very humble, very nice guys that I worked with. But there was always there's ones that you almost had to always prove yourself to. And like I mentioned, it's kind of that way in life. When I started working as a dealership technician, there was a guy there. His name was Gene Sanders, I believe is his last name. And he was an older guy. He was the shop foreman. And this is back in probably 1990, 89. And I went up to him and introduced myself the first time. And I said, so I had these uniform shirts and it had my name on it. So I said, my name's David. And he said, I see that. And, he kind of gave me a little bit of a hard time for a while. But I think he was just kind of filling me out, breaking me in. I was the young guy, of course, And years later, we got to where we got along pretty good. because I think he figured me out. I was pretty humble and nice and all that. And then years later, they ended up putting him back on the line as a line technician. And then there was times where he was struggling with some of the new stuff that I had just come right out of college and was learning all of that stuff while I was in college. And he started asking me for help. So what did I do? I helped him. Of course I did. Wouldn't have done it any different. And we actually became pretty good friends. We worked side by side, and I helped him every chance that I could. He sometimes you go through hard things in life. You go through, people might mistreat you, people might be mean to you and things like that. But you know what? You kind of learn from everything. It makes you a little bit tougher. Maybe I just needed to be toughened up a little. I'm going to take this hat off because I just now saw that it's pretty bright. So yeah, those are the kinds of things that... All right, so Tracy says Watauga Lake, I think you're right. I think it was Watauga Lake because there was no motors allowed, no engines allowed in the water. So you couldn't put down oil, that kind of stuff. So it was a really clean lake. Yes. Rachel says, I think the big difference is how NASCAR was made up of two people who survived the Depression. Today, NASCAR is made up of those who are well off enough to support their racing. Oh, yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to mention was when I started in NASCAR, there was nice people. And then I started seeing a trend. I started seeing things change, and it started being to where there was bringing in a lot of the team members from the IndyCar series and from other areas were coming in, and engineers, and then things just started changing quite a bit, and we started working with engineers and those people. And I'm not knocking engineers, but I'm just saying that things did change a lot whenever we started having I don't know, it was just a different... It wasn't the good old boy, the good country boys from Charlotte anymore, or from Wilkesboro or Virginia. It was people from different areas that we didn't really know how to take and know how to handle some of them. So anyway, what's up, My Quick Foods? How you doing? Thanks for tuning in. And what is your name? I know that's your YouTube channel, and what is your channel about? I haven't checked it out. My Quick Foods. It almost sounds like a racing sponsor. What was the Food City 500? The My Quick Foods 500. Rachel says, was Robert Yates' dad or Doug Yates' grandfather involved in building engines too? He was a preacher, of all things. So he was a preacher at a church. I'm thinking in Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm trying to remember which church that was. Was it Hickory Grove? Maybe. I don't know. I know that Robert's... Or was it in Mooresville? No, that's the church that Robert went to, was up in Mooresville. Anyway, he was a preacher somewhere. And that's where, they got the good, strong Christian faith foundation of Doug Yates, Robert Yates, Richard Yates, because their dad. I mean, every time we had we would have lunches like just about every week at Lc8 Engines, and would always be led by prayer. Some of our meetings, we had Bible study, and Robert Yates Racing, as Nick Ramey mentioned last week, Robert Yates Racing was the initial team that had Bible study. And I also know we had it at Savco as well. You had Max Helton with MRO, Motor Racing Outreach, did the Bible study. And I know Joe Gibbs Racing, they have MRO involved in there. And we had Nick Terry, who was the guy that was doing our Bible study out at Lc8 Engines whenever I left. So I still keep in touch with him on Twitter. He's got his Twitter account, so I get notifications when he tweets. So yeah, that was the deal. Dickie says, what are you going to do with the bulldozer, bulldozer? So, if you haven't seen my video, I put a new video up. I put a video on of how to operate the bulldozer, how to work the controls, how to start it, all that kind of stuff. It's a different kind of animal. It's a big old, well, I said big diesel engine. It's a torquey diesel engine. But what am I going to do with it? So, I've got 11 acres of property, and I've got some creek area. I've got some areas that I can't I can just walk to. I can't take my golf carts to because they're so, hilly and stuff like that. So what I'd like to do is just cut some paths down through there, and not mess up nature, because I want to keep it all in the nature. But I like having my trails that I can ride if I want to take my dirt bike or my golf carts down. Mostly, I do a little bit of dirt bike riding, but I'm not going to tear up the property and all that. So mostly just have fun with it. I like having fun with the bulldozer. I mean, who doesn't like riding around on a big, heavy, over 40,000 pound piece of equipment and just mowing stuff over? I mean, how cool is that? You can't do that with your car or truck, but you can do it with a bulldozer. Hammer down. So hopefully I just don't get it stuck. If I do, though, I've got some solutions, because I can wrap some chains to a tree and working my way out, or just wait till I got stuck down there on one of my golf carts one time. My electric golf cart, I got stuck in the mud, and I had to wait on it to dry. I had to wait about a week before I could go down there and get it. But now that I got a bulldozer, I could have went down there and pulled it out, or I could use my tractor to pull it out. I don't know, but it's still too. Sometimes it's too slick. All right, so my quick food says my name's David, so I can remember that. Thanks for joining us. Bob Pedersen says, when I met you and got started at Sabco, had one engineer. That was Greg Irwin, yes, who is now with Penske. He was the catch can guy on Sunday. Yes, Greg Irwin. I believe he started there in 1996, if I'm not mistaken, because we actually roomed together in Japan. So he started traveling with us in 96. And he was a gung-ho, know-it-all engineer, graduated from Clemson University. And anytime I would say something, he kind of like chuckle, like just smart, like, I know everything, I already know this. Oh, he got on my nerves. But anyway, we ended up being friends eventually. And last time he saw me, he come in, like I said, he works for Penske. He was a crew chief there. He may still be crew chiefing, but Greg Irwin, I'm sure y'all have heard of him. He's doing really well. He gave me a hug, and he's like, man, I miss you from, back in the day. We had so many good times and all that kind of stuff. So he's now very humble. He's got his wife and his family and all that good stuff. But I'm not knocking on him, but it's one of those things. You can get a first impression of people when you first meet them, and you're like, oh, I don't know about this person. I don't really like them, but everybody kind of has their own reasons for being the way they are. If they seem really cocky and arrogant or snooty or any of this kind of stuff, they probably have a reason. Something in life has molded them into being that way, however they are. So usually you just get to know them a little bit, and usually find out your first impressions not always right. Maybe you need to change how you think about people and quit being cynical. And that's kind of what I feel like I had to do. I'm still careful though. So Dickie says, my dad was a cat mechanic. Very cool. I forgot, this is a cat engine, 3310, I believe, something like that. But it just had the cylinder head reworked. I need to put a thermostat back in it, which means I'm going to have to lose some of the water that's in it, coolant. But I'll get to it. I need to do a little bit of maintenance on it. I need to change the oil. I did let it run out of diesel fuel one time and ended up having to bleed all the injectors. So actually I did a video on that. I haven't posted it, but I got so many videos I need to work on. But I did go and buy 55 gallons of diesel fuel, off-road diesel fuel, the other day. I put the 55-gallon drum in the back of my truck. Took off down the road. Went down to the Lake Norman oil and filled that sucker up, 55 gallons, and I come home, put my electric pump in there, and it wouldn't work. So what I ended up doing, I ended up siphoning it out into my 5-gallon jugs, and then I ended up laying it down at Tracy's suggestion. So I ended up getting it out and draining it all into another 55-gallon drum. So there. So that was fun. So now I got plenty of fuel. What you have to do with that is I have to add per 5 gallons of diesel fuel, I have to add 1 quart of non-detergent motor oil, And I say motor oil because that's what it's called on the container. I should say engine oil because that's what Robert Yates would say. But yeah, thanks for joining, Bob Patterson. It's good to see you again. I haven't seen you in probably since 1999, 2000. So probably since 2000. Because I know whenever we'd made some changes there, Ganassi bought Sabco, and I don't know, what did you end up doing? Where did you end up going to? So, but yeah, you traveled with, that was cool. Bob says he did love telling people that he knew more than they did. Yes, in my case, he was right. Well, he was an engineer right out of Clemson, you know, but the problem there is we had other engineers coming in to work there, and a lot of times they thought they knew everything, and they thought that they should be getting paid more than anybody because they had this engineering degree, even though they really didn't know racing, but they got hired into racing because they had this, you know, because that was the era of time when we were starting to shift towards adding engineers to racing. And it made some improvements, but it also changed racing in ways that, you know, the fans didn't relate to as much because they liked the grassroots racing where it's the good old country boys going out and being ingenuitive and coming up with things versus engineers coming up with different types of metals and, you know, some of the cheating and different things. Well, there's a lot of cheating done by the good old country boys too, but I mean, I guess you could say Smokey Unick, you know, he was an engineer, and but he was also a racer. See, that's the difference. A lot of times the engineers, and I'm not knocking engineers, but there's very few that are racers. You know, Doug Yates is an engineer, but he's also a racer. He's also an engine builder. So in that case, you know, you get the basics and you know how to build engines, and then you go to engineering school, great. But if you come right out of high school, go to engineering school, you know nothing about building engines, you know nothing about racing, you engineer first, then you learn racing, you're a little bit at a disadvantage in my opinion. It's better to learn that other stuff. So, yes. All right, so, yeah, you're right, Dickie. I will never run out of fuel again. So, I'll never do that. All right. And because that is a pain in the butt, and whenever you run out of fuel, because you have air in the system, and you cannot sorry, I had to block someone. You cannot. It's a pain. In a diesel system, you have to have no air in there. You have to have all the fuel, and that's what. So a diesel engine, I can explain that. So you see this piston. This piston has a lot of compression because you're taking the air and fuel mixture that's in the cylinder and you're compressing it. Yeah, let's see, remove. All right. You're taking the air and fuel in the engine, which is diesel fuel. It takes a lot to compress the diesel fuel. As you compress air fuel mixture, it makes the temperature grow. So if you, on a diesel, you have to compress it, like 22-to-1 compression. And that, whenever you do that, it compresses the diesel fuel. So that's why I don't have a spark plug. Compresses it so much that it ignites the diesel fuel mixture. It just explodes. It's like having an explosion in the cylinder. Okay, so diesel fuel, you compress it with a 22-to-1 compression. It gets hot enough to ignite that fuel, and it pushes the piston down. All right, on a gasoline engine, you have the piston coming up, and it's compressing, and if the compression gets too high, or if you have that spark, the spark has to hit from the spark plug. It hits before the piston gets to the top because it's flying up in the cylinder. It ignites, gives enough time for the air fuel mixture to ignite, and pushes the piston back down. Well, what happens on engines, and this is what you hear about spark knocking or pre-ignition, is spark knocking is whenever your piston's coming up. Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Sorry about the rude comments, that moon person. I was actually trying to do that at the same time. People come on and act stupid. All right, so on a gasoline engine, the piston's coming up and compressing, and whenever you hear spark knock, which is like popcorn in your engine, you hear popcorn, that is pre-ignition, meaning that your compression's too high or your fuel mixture's too lean. A leaner mixture is going to burn hotter. So to have that optimum, that's why your carburation or your fuel injection, everything has to be just right, the right fuel mixture, so that whenever the piston's coming up the cylinder, it's just the right temperature to enough to where when the spark plug ignites that mixture, it's going to burn clean and it's going to burn thorough and it's going to push the piston back down. If it's too lean, it'll burn. It's like a cutting torch when you add oxygen to it. Or it could also, as the mixture burns, it's burning. The fuel's burning, the fuel air, and then it hits a lean spot, the flame goes out. The rest of the hydrocarbons, which is the raw fuel, gets dumped out the exhaust. I could go on and on and on about that, but that's probably not exactly, I might be putting y'all to sleep talking about all this. So Rachel says, do you have any memories of Buddy Baker? I wish I could have met him. He looked like a fun storyteller to get to know. And I'll tell you the story about Buddy Baker. The last time I saw Buddy, I was at the Lowe's Home Improvement in Mooresville, and I was at lunch, and I was down looking at some light bulbs or whatever, and then I just looked up and I saw this. I looked up and it was Buddy Baker standing right over my shoulder. So I was like, oh, hey Buddy, how you doing, man? That was very cool to see him. Very soft-spoken guy, just the gentle giant, basically, kind of thing. When I was going to the track, I used to just see him every once in a while, but of course he wasn't. I think he was done driving by the time I was going to the racetrack, but yeah. So that's Buddy Baker. And, but yeah, I hated whenever he passed away. What a great guy. So Rachel says there are a few videos left of really funny stories he told. Yeah. That would be cool to do a compilation video of a lot of those stories like that. Yeah. Oh, Bob's Patterson says, I stayed at Ganassi until 2003, so you were still there, I guess, when Sterling was running decent, running good, winning races, actually. Yeah, I do miss the good old boys of racing, NASCAR, working together myself. So Dickie says, I got in trouble calling it an explosion when I went through Bradley School at Fort Bragg. The instructor said it was a quick fire. Okay, yeah. Dickie's right. I mean, but I think you're right about the explosion too, because it's you think about an engine that's turning, let's say 10,000 RPM for simplification, and you got 8 cylinders, and you got one cylinder firing at one time. It's firing at each 90 degrees. 90, one cylinder's firing, 90, one cylinder's firing. So that's 360 degrees, and then you got the other 360. So it's like cylinder 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2. In 2 revolutions, you've just fired 8 pistons. 2 revolutions. Now I'd have to do the math on this, but you're talking about 10,000 revolutions in 1 minute. So if you've got 2 revolutions, you fired 8 times. How much is that in 10,000 times per minute? How many firing is that? Was it like 80,000? I guess it would be, no, it would be half of that, I think. So it'd be 40,000 times it's firing. How many times is that in a race? Yeah. Yeah, diesel is basically spontaneous combustion. It combusts itself without the help of any aid, except whenever it's cold start and you have the glow plugs, which if you watch my video on the bulldozer, I turn it 10 seconds to the left with the glow plugs, heating the glow plugs, and that's going to heat the fuel, or it heats the glow plugs so that when the fuel mixture gets to them, it's easier to fire, because like I said, you have to, as you compress that fuel air mixture, the piston's coming up in the cylinder, it's compressing, it's getting hotter, 22 to 1, it's going to ignite. But if the air's cold, so you're fighting against the temperature in the cylinders, the temperature that's coming in, you're fighting against that temperature. So the glow plugs help heat that. It basically causes that spontaneous combustion. I believe the optimal fuel mixture for a gasoline engine, gosh, was it 13 to 1? 13.2 or something like that. It's been a while. So that's when you're, and then you also have barometric pressure. That's when you're tuning a carburetor. You have to take into consideration if you're in Denver, Colorado versus, you know, North Carolina. You have to take into consideration the altitude, the air temperature, the moisture in the air, all these things to tune a carburetor or to tune a fuel injected engine. So, you know, air temperature is probably one of the biggest ones. On a colder, let's say on a cold morning, you've all heard of a choke, and that's what, you know, on a carburetor, whatever. Or if you start a car, it goes into what's called open loop, which is, it means it's just going to start the car based on the coolant temperature. And sometimes cars have air temperature sensors, but they also have a barometric pressure sensors, but it starts the car on going off of coolant temperature. So if the coolant's cold, then it says we're going to have to add more fuel mixture to get this car started. So, and the fuel mixture, colder fuel is harder to ignite. So I mean, we get into all kinds of things, and we could go into this conversation forever, but I think I'll probably end it now. You heard any more questions? Don't forget to, after this video ends, if you would, hit the thumbs up and let me know if you like it, and it lets other people know this is a good enough video worth watching, and maybe they'll tune in with us on the next Monday. So the EcoBoost works great in upper Colorado, yes, where the air is really thin. You can pack more air in that engine as long as it's got the right amount of fuel going into it. Yes. So yeah, you know, when you got colder air, you can get some of the fastest speeds on the track because the cold air is dense. So if you can pack more dense air in that cylinder when there's pistons coming up, you got more air packed in there, and it's compressing, boom, hotter fire. So yeah. All right, thanks everybody so much for tuning in, and we will see y'all next Monday evening. Tune in for Doug Richards, and I'll have him on at 7:30 next Monday evening, as in every Monday evening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, and thank you all so much, and we will see y'all next week. Have a great week.